Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Gitin Daf Nun Aleph. We begin on the bottom of Nun Mebeis, 2 lines up at the bottom of the Yomid, where the Gemara is in the middle of the discussion regarding one of the halachas of our previous Mishnah. We spoke about, again, we started a new parak, continuing the theme of the previous parak regarding Tikkun Olam. So we had in our Mishnah many different halachas of Tikkun Olam. One of the halachas was that Ein Mitzin Lachilas Peres. If someone has a field that was stolen, and then the Ganav goes and sells that field to someone else, that guy now has his field repossessed, so he can go and collect whatever his losses were. However, from Tikkun Olam, they said that the Shevach Karkois and Achilas Peres, regarding what you improve the ground, regarding the produce that you produce, that you cannot collect from the Chasim Mishabadim. But the Gemara is in the middle discussing why that is. We already had one interpretation, Lafisha in Kisuvin, because they're not written inside the document of the sale, and then the Gemara is going to introduce another opinion, and the Gemara is going to ask on that opinion to qualify that halacha. Which corresponds to the Bakazich and the Cheschel, turn to Daf Chaim, during today's Daf. Some discussed in today's Daf are, like we said, a continuation of the Machlekes regarding Emetzin Lachilas Peres L'Shevach Hakois M'Nechasim Meshabadim. Yesterday we introduced the idea of Fisha and Kesuvin because they're not written. And it's not written, there's no koil, and what do you want from the lekuchas? They're going to be, whoever buys from someone is going to be up the creek. Or lefisha in kitsuvin, as we're going to introduce in today's daf, because it's not a set amount. If it's not a set amount, so the buyer cannot protect himself, because he doesn't know how much the guy is going to improve a field. I heard a guy stole a field, fine, but I don't know how much he's going to improve it. It could be millions of dollars. So therefore, we're not going to obligate that collection from the lekuchas. The halacha, some of the important terms and concepts today is daf Abbas and the Zaynis Mina'achim. They tell us Isun Chasim. When there's a father who passed away, so he leaves over the estate for the sons. What do the daughters do? So the daughters get fed from the brothers, and when they're getting married, they take 1/10 of the property for themselves as an adunya to go ahead and use for their marriage. The halacha of Amoitzi Mitzia, one of the other halachas of our Mishnah, was Leishava, and they take it, and someone finds a found object, a lost object, and he's coming to return it. So the guy's gonna say, "Hey, there was $500 in here." He says, "There's only 200. What do you want from me?" So he doesn't have to swear, because although that's technically moed b'miktzas, which is a biblical oath of shvua, they take an olam. The guy's not going to return. He said, "Well, I need this headache. I'm going to be doing a mitzvah, and the guy's going to tell me what you owe me. I'm going to have to swear." So that's the halacha of the Mishnah. However, we're going to see in the Gemara, Blizman Yaakov holds that Meshav Aveda is mechuyev b'shvuya if he was moed b'miktzas. So the Gemara is going to discuss that similar machlekes regarding that and Blizman Yaakov, which relates to the halacha of kofer hakol patam shvua. From biblical halacha, if someone denies the total claim, he's exempt from a shvua, but his moed b'miktzas hatayna is chayav b'shvua midayraisa. So when the guy claims a certain amount and you admit a part of that, that's when the Torah tells you that you are obligated in the oath. So in the previous daf, as we mentioned, we said the halacha of Emetzin Lachilas Peres L'Shevach Karkais M'Nechasim Meshabadim. We said if a person bought a field, later discovered the Meicher did not own it, but rather stole it, so the Nigzel reclaims his field with all the Peres that the Lekech planted. Now the thing is that Lekech then collects that from the Meicher, the money that he paid for the Sada, the Peres, and the Shevach to the actual field. So he gets to collect all of it. The thing is that Chum, however, initiated that the Peres and the Shevach may not be collected from the Chasim Mishabadim, meaning if he sold off stuff and he's like, "Hey, I got nothing to pay you," he's like, "Yeah, but after this happened, you had fields and you sold it off to others, so only from the Chasim Nechar, only if you have it available." But he wouldn't be able to go ahead, and only the money for the field could be collected from the Chasim Mishabadim. But when he increased the value of the property, or they had Peres, so that he cannot collect. And that's a machlekes in the Gemara, why that is. In the previous daf, we mentioned the interpretation of Rish Lakish, Lafisha in Kesuvin. The Malva does not collect from Mishabadim if the loan was not recorded in the shtar in general. That's called the Milva Peh, because the less they call, if it's not written down, a potential Lekech is not aware that the Malva might confiscate his field. Now, regarding Peres v'Shevach, that's what he said, even if and Rashi addressed this, even if they were written into the shtar, less they call. It's like it wasn't written. So even if, quote unquote, it's written in there, like I take full responsibility, Rashi said that's only to help to obligate you from your own personal, what's called B'nei Chayri. But from Mishbadim, it doesn't get out there that this guy had improved his field, and that was the first interpretation of Rish Lakish. Why from Peres and Shvach Kakois you cannot collect from the Chasim Mishbadim. Now, on the bottom of Nun and Beis, second line up at the bottom of the Yomid, the Gemara introduces the second interpretation. Chanina Amar, and the way the taste is written here on the bottom line says that he's disagreeing with Ula, And he's saying that even though you wrote it in the document, the reason why you cannot collect shabach and peiros is lafisha and kitzuvin. That is, you cannot collect from mishabadim, and lekuches cannot go ahead and be careful to put aside to collect from because it doesn't have a set amount. So a malva would collect from mishabadim only if the loan is a fixed amount. Because what happens is lekuches can protect themselves by ensuring that after their purchase, so the labor still owns enough karka equivalent to the chayv. He says, okay, I know how much is owed. I'm going to make sure not to buy from that guy. But peiros, shvach, mezainis, they don't have a fixed amount, so the buyers cannot protect themselves. So if a tikkun olam, he says, hey, even if you wrote it in, but the guy doesn't know how much that's going to be, so therefore you cannot collect that from the chasam mishabadim. Those are the two interpretations. Is it because lafish in kisuvin or because in kitzuvin? Sounds similar, but one's because it's not written, and one because no, even if it's written, if it's not a set amount, we're not going to let you collect that from the chasam mishabadim. Now, on that interpretation of Reb Chanina, the Gemara has the following question: Ibaylu li Reb Chanina kitzuvin u kisuvin bayi? Is he adding on to what Rish Lakish had said? That is, you need to have a set amount and written, so then the word's going to get out, and then he'll know how to protect himself. Or it's Gitin type of non alpha and non alpha. Maybe no kitzuvin if it's set amount of alpha peshain kisuvin, even though it's not written. Which the Rashi explains, Taisus disagrees, but meaning to say that he would hold that even if it's an oral loan, a milva peh, but if it's a set amount, so people know how much that is, and therefore you'll be able to collect from mishabadim. So he says, no, we all know that milva peh, you're not giving mishabadim. So he says other types of obligations, not a milva, things that are a set amount. So then, even though it's not written down, so then you'd be able to collect from mishabadim. So what is it? Is that you need kitzubin and kitzubin, or kitzubin even if it's not written? So the Gemara says, Tashma, it's Mingaraya, the Itma. We learned as follows: Mishames. Someone passed away. They left over 2 daughters and a son. Now, the first daughter went, and she got married, and the halacha is when the daughters get married, they take 1/10 of the estate to provide for them on the dunya, besides what they get fed from the brother at all times. When she gets married, she takes 1/10 of the estate. Okay, the first girl gets married. But the second daughter didn't get a chance to collect that amount because she didn't get married until the son died. Now what happens is, now that the son died, there's only 2 daughters remaining. They now inherit the whole estate. So Amr B'Yechon says, Shniya Vitra. The second one lost her rights to take 1/10 of the estate. In other words, we don't say, wait a second, let's even out the score first. First, let me take 1/10 like you took 1/10 when you got married, and then the rest will divide equally. No, because the reason why they instituted that you get 1/10 of the estate is so that the daughter should have parnasa for when they're getting married, and the dunya, well, you have more than enough. You're inheriting with your sister this entire estate from the father. So therefore, it says Rabbi Yochanan, you lost the ability to get 1/10. Had you gotten married before the son died, you would have gotten 1/10 also, but there was no reason for that. However, Reb Chanina said to him, and this is Reb Chanina that we're in the middle of discussing regarding what does Reb Chanina hold regarding Kitzubin and Kesubin. He says what? Because the older sister beat her to it, got married, so she loses out? He says, what are you talking about? Gedolim Azu Amru. Greater than this, they said, that even if the brother sells the Nechasim, halacha is, Meitzian, the girls would collect from the buyers that their 1/10 of the estate, liparnasa, for their ability to get married. And even though the halacha is ve'ein meitzian lemezainos, you don't collect for the food that they're supposed to get from the estate, from the mishabadim, what's sold off. And you're going to say shniya vitra, that the second girl loses her rights because she didn't get a chance to get married before the brother died? What do you mean? Even if it was sold off to others, which is even greater than this. The halacha is that the girl doesn't lose out when she finally is going to get married. Now, when they're both in front of us, you think that she's going to lose out? How could that be? Chanina says, how could it be any less than Mishabadim? Mishabadim shall collect. So here, when they're both here, she shall lose her right to her 10th. So he disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan. But the main point is like this. Var Parnasa, this idea of getting 1/10 Parnasa in this context means to say the 1/10 of the estate that she gets to provide for herself when she's getting married for her, not for the Nadin. To make its kaitzer, that is a set amount because it's a tenth of the estate. Everyone knows how much that is. Mechdev like siva, but it's not written anywhere. And what do we see, Reb Chanina? V'kometzia. That was his point of his Kabul Chaim. He was trying to prove the point of these two sisters that if over there that you can get it from Mishubadim when the brother sells off the estate. He's like, yeah, I want to make money off it. I don't want my sisters to take a tenth of the estate. I'll sell it off before they get a chance to get married. The halacha is they would be able to collect from the Mishubadim. He says, I'll waste it. I'll use it up. I'll go on vacation. I'll fly the world, whatever, this and that before they get married. But they could collect from the Shabbatim. So obviously, you see, according to Chanina, that Kitsuvin, if it has a set amount, like Parnasa, which is a tenth of the estate, you could collect from the Shabbatim, even though it's not written, like over here, it's not written anywhere, the Parnasa. So you see, says the Gemara, to answer our question, the Reb Chanina's halacha of Kitsuvin is even though it's not Kesuvin. So that is the Gemara's answer, really. The Gemara says, Shani Parnasa is different, Kivin the Islay Kala, since the word gets out, from the moment the father dies, everyone knows that a daughter takes a tenth of the estate. Come on, dummy. So it's like as if it's written. So you're right, it's not a raya, says the Gemara, because it's going to be like Ketsuven, Ukasuven, by virtue of the word getting out. Because you're right, it's not really a din and being written, it's a din that people hear about it and the word gets out. So the Gemara continues. Now the Gemara asks regarding the interpretation of the previous daf. As we said, there's two interpretations. There was Ula in the name of Rish Lakish, and there was this interpretation of Chanina. So Master Rav Huna Bar Menoch asks on Ula's interpretation, the first interpretation from a Mishnah Masechet Ksubas. So like Rashi gives the background when if someone gets married to a woman, and this woman had a daughter from a previous marriage. So she's like, okay, when you marry me, it's two for the price of one. You got to take care of my daughter also. No problem. 5 years, I'll provide for her. Then, within the 5 years, he divorced her also. Then she gets married to a third guy. And he also makes up with her to provide for her daughter, his stepdaughter, for 5 years. What's the halacha now? So the halacha is one will give her the actual food, and one will give her the monetary value of the food because she doesn't have to get double portions throughout these 5 years. So that's what the Mishnah continues over there in what the Gemara is quoting. Mesu, what happens if both of them die? So now so what's the halacha now? So interesting is like this, says the Mishnah. B'nei Sehem, the daughters of these men who died, their own daughters, not their stepdaughter, this woman that they had married, this divorcee. They get fed only from the Tati's available assets. Because the Mishnah said, one of the halachas of Tikkun Olam is, you don't collect for the sustenance, for the food of the widow and of the daughters from the Chasam Mishabadim. But the stepdaughter, she's nizaynis min the Chasam Mishabadim. She gets fed from even sold off properties. Because she's like a creditor, because he was a debt that he took a responsibility for her to say, yeah, I'll provide for her for 5 years. That's the halacha of the Mishnah Ksubas. But the main thing the Gemara wants to say is you see that since 5 years is a set amount, even though it's not written anywhere, still you're going to collect from Mishabadim like Reb Chanina, and it's difficult on the Ula. Ula says it has to be written. Here, there's nothing that's written, and it's not necessarily the word gets out. When a guy dies and he has his daughters left over, so the word gets out. But over here, that there's a stepdaughter, not necessarily everyone knows. And you see that even so, it's not written, but there is a set amount. A set amount, a buyer could beware if he does his due diligence. And so you see like the Chanina's interpretation of Ketsuvin being enough. And you don't say like Ula that you have to be written, because it's not written over here. Who, the stepdaughter? Right. Yeah. No oral agreement. Yeah. It's just he's taking risk. Well, the Gemara is going to say now that it's not so simple, but yeah, it's an oral agreement. It wasn't documented. In other words, it didn't have this. Which Allah?
for the 5 years. She doesn't get.
The stepdaughter, he took responsibility.
Stepdaughter gets.
He's going to provide for 5 years, right?
The almana doesn't get.
Right. The woman and his own daughters, they only get from Bnei Chayr, and that was the halacha in our Mishnah, not from the Chasim Mishabadim, because of Tikkun Olam. Because the question of what the Tikkun Olam is because they're not Kesuvin or not Ketzuvin. But one thing we see from the stepdaughter is that she is going to collect from the Chasim Mishabadim. Why? Because it's set amount, even though it's not written. So you see the halacha is like a Pchanina, because the primary variable is the Ketzuvin element, not the Kesuvin element. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a raya, because Hachmai Eskina, what if of him Masechtas Ksubis is B'Shekanu Miyadai, where they actually made a acquisition, like you said, it's not Stam. They actually had made a kinyan, and like Rashi says, Stam Kinya Liksivai Medis. That's how the way Rashi says it. It says a little different, but Akaponim. But generally, when you make an acquisition, you're going to write a document. You wrote a document, so it was Kesuvin. So it's not a raya Reb Chanina. It could be like Ula, because it was written too. So the Gemara says, wait a second. Now the Gemara gets off a little bit. Once we gave this answer, we're going to get into that Mishnah Ksubas now. If that's the case, and Banis Nami, then why wouldn't you say the same thing, that his daughters should also be provided for Mishabadim, since you tell me that the case over there of when they took responsibility was with a kinyan? So the Gemara, no, B'Shekanu Lazu. He only made a kinyan to provide for his stepdaughter, but Lekanu Lazu, when he married his wife, he didn't take responsibility for the daughters he's going to have from her. Only took responsibility for his stepdaughter, the daughter that she had from a previous marriage. So the Gemara says, my Pascha. What's the understanding of the Tana? Why is it so black and white that you would say that it would be like that he would only make a kinyan to provide for his wife's previous daughter, but not for the daughter that he's going to have from this marriage with her? So the Gemara says, no, the difference is, his Bas Ishtoi, his wife's daughter, she's a 7-year-old girl. The Hava Bishas Kinyan, she was there at the time of the Kinyan. When they got married, he made this Kinyan with her. So Mahani like Kinyan, the Kinyan is going to be effective. But Bita dil have Bishas Kinyan, but his own daughter from her, who wasn't born yet, so Lohem Mahan like Kinyan, the Kinyan is not going to be effective. So therefore, that's why we're saying that it's no Kinyan. So the Gemara says, okay, good answer, but Mila is Kinyan, can't we be talking about the Hava Tavayi Bishas Kinyan? In other words, wouldn't we understand from the wording of the Mishnah that his own daughters might have been there at the time of the Kinyan? How's the puzzle? How's his own daughters from this wife there at the time of the Kinyan if they're just getting married now? Says, what would the case be talking about? The Girsha, what happened was, his own wife, he divorced her after he had a daughter from her. Then Vahadra, now he's remarrying her, and he's making these stipulations, because the Mishnah doesn't specify. So it wouldn't be only that he's marrying this woman that has a daughter from a previous marriage. It might be he's marrying a woman that has a daughter from his own marriage with her. So if he's making conditions with her, she's making conditions like, okay, look, I'll get remarried to you, but you got to take care of Shira, that's from my first marriage, and you got to take care of Malka from our marriage. So if you tell me that it's a kinyan, then why wouldn't she make a kinyan on her daughter that she has from him too? And if that's the case, why is he saying from his own daughters? In the same case, you're saying the daughter of the Mishnah, so we're saying the daughter from the previous marriage, Chas Mishabadim. His own daughters, Chas B'nei Chayrin. But if you're telling me that it's talking about that you made a kinyan, the case could also technically be talking about that he's remarrying her with his own daughter also. So why, if you're making a kinyan, why wouldn't his own daughter get from the Chas Mishabadim too?
You're saying that when a lady gets divorced, her daughter loses the shiur of Yerusha at one time?
Well, that wasn't the thing that we're talking about now. Now we're talking about mezainis. We're talking about getting fed when as long as she doesn't get married, she gets fed from the estate.
But it seems like maybe she would also lose that.
The daughter shouldn't suffer because the mother got divorced. I don't care if she lives with the mother.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
But you say he doesn't have the right to support the daughter once she's divorced. Right, that's what I'm saying. But when you say she's divorced, he's not getting her mizanos, the shiur.
The daughter or the mother?
The daughter.
No, so I'm saying
The mother and the daughter are not getting mizanos.
I mean, you want to know that if he got divorced and it's his own daughter,
How does he separate the relationship?
No, the difference, maybe even if he would have to give mezainis, well, you have to know maybe if she's with her, with him. Yeah, it's a good question. But either way, you could say that nechasim mishabadim, that she would want him to take responsibility, that the daughter would be able to collect even from collateral, and that would only be the case if you made the kinyan. Right, interesting question. But the Gemara says, so then why you differentiating between Bas Ishtoi or his own daughter if there's a kinyan? So the Gemara says, Ella, the difference is, Bitoi, his daughter, his own daughter, Maisi doesn't have to feed his own daughter, the truth is. The reason why people feed their own kids is because of the stipulation of the courts. So, Lamahan Lakinyan. So the kinyan is not going to be effective because you already are obligated because of a Tanai Bezin when you got married originally. But he doesn't have to provide for his wife's daughter. That's not because of a condition of the court. So if you're making kinyan, so that's going to create an effectiveness in you becoming obligated. So the Gemara says, what? What do you think? It's worse because there's a Tanai Bezin that you have to feed your daughter. Now a kinyan would not be effective to obligate you even the chasam shabbat. Why would that be? So rather says the Gemara a different shot. Bidai regarding his daughter. Kivin the betnai bezin ka'achla, since the bezin requires that the father provide for his own daughter from this marriage with this woman, and he's also now doing a kinyan, so therefore he's going to really pay attention to try to pay up what he's obligated in. So Amar, I would say in that case, Surari, a bundle of money, atvasa, that he gave her when he passed away, that it should be for her to provide for that. So the reason why she cannot collect from the chasam mishabadim is because he feels so obligated to his own daughter. That's why she cannot collect from the chasam mishabadim, because we're concerned that maybe she was already paid up from her father. Bas Ishta, his stepdaughter, is not going to feel as obligated. We're not concerned that he's giving her a pile of money or cash that when he's passing away, and therefore she could collect as her kinyan obligated him in the chasam mishabadim. That's the difference for his own daughter and Bas Ishta. But the main reason why we brought this in, we thought it would be a raya to Reb Chanina and not to Ula, that we see that it's enough with Ketsuben and not Kesubin. The Gemara says, no, it was Kesubin because there was a kinyan, and kinyan is usually written, and that's what the Gemara then discussed. Oh, if there's a kinyan, so why not his daughter too? And that we explained just right now, because Emet Srari Atvasa. You cannot collect from the Chas Mishabadim because we're concerned that maybe your father already paid you up, maybe you cannot collect from incumbent properties. The Gemara says, Tashma, try to bring another raya. This machlekes between Reb Chanina and Ula, specifically regarding Reb Chanina, if Ketuvin requires it to be written, or is it enough to just be Ketuvin? So on that, the Brisa says, Amr Reb Nasan says, Amosai, when did we say in the Mishnah, this halacha of Tikkun Olam, that you cannot collect for Achilas pears from the Chasam Mishabadim when the guy has his field stolen, and then the guy buys it from him, from the Ganav, and then he produces, so that you cannot collect for those pairs from the Chasam Mishabadim. That's Bizman, so it's a little interesting the way the Gemara explains it. Bizman shekad the mekre shel sheni. In other words, if the purchase of this second buyer, meaning that the first one that bought the stolen field is coming to collect now from Lekuches, meaning what happened is that Ruvain is a Ganav. He stole a field from somebody. Now, Reuven had sold off fields to some other person. But one field that he sold to Shimon was a stolen field. So Shimon's like, hey, you owe me money. It was a stolen field. It was a scam. So he's coming to collect from Reuven. Now, the way it works with Lekuches and the Chasam B'Shabadim is that whoever is earlier is obligated, that the guy, the Balchayv, the Reuven guy is obligated to him, has first rights on whatever property he had available. If he ended up selling that off at a later point in time, those are almost shubid. There's a lien on all those properties for him. So the Reb Nassan is telling us that when did we say in the Mishnah that this guy who bought the stolen field cannot collect from the Chasam Mishabadim whatever he produced from the field itself he could collect, because there was a lien on whatever this guy who sold him on all his properties. But the Achilas Peiris, meaning what he produced, that he planted all these trees and they did all these things and all these upgrades in the field that connected from the Chasam Mishabadim, is only if this mekach of the second lekeach was before l'shivcha shel rishon, meaning there's a guy who bought from Reuven other fields. If he bought it before this Shimon improved, when he bought this from the Moicher, the second guy, the guy he wants to collect from, this first Lekeach, the Shimon, had not yet improved the ground. So essentially what Reb Nosson is saying is, you didn't have a shibud yet of your improvements. It wasn't here yet. Meaning you taka bought before this other guy. Say, hey, buddy, I'm collecting from you. Because when I was sold this fake field, it was stolen field, this was still by this Reuben, by the seller. And then you bought it from him. I have a lien on that property. But you cannot collect the amount of the Achilas Perish Shevach Kakais because you had not yet improved. So let's say you bought the fake field in January. He bought the other field in February. But you only improved your fake field in March. So there was no Shvach Kakais to have a lien at that time on his things. But says Reb Nosson, Aval Kadim Shivcha Sharishon Lamechit Sheni. But let's say that actually this Shimon who bought the fake field bought it in January, improved it in February, and only in March did this Levi buy a different field of this Reuven. So, as Rashi says, that when this Shimon had improved the field, everyone knew that he bought it with insurance. And the word went out of the responsibility of the property with whatever improvements he's going to make is on the estate of the Gazlan, then Goyim Nechasim Shabbat. Then actually the Shimon could collect even for the Achilas Peres and the Shvach HaKodesh from this Levi who bought the properties. Says the Gemara, Alma, you see, Meshum Delay Kodemhu. The reason why you cannot collect from the Chasim Meshabad and the Achilas Peres is not because that you need to have a set amount and that it should be written. So this discussion in Rashi tells you exactly what's the Gemara's question. But Al Kapanim, you see, it's just because you didn't create it first. But if you would have created the Paris and the Shvach Kakos beforehand, you would be able to collect. What do you mean? It's not because it's not Ketubin or Ketubin, it's simply because you didn't have it. Therefore, but if you had it, then it would be. So, Al Kapanim, you definitely don't need to have both of them a set amount. First of all, it's not a set amount. And maybe not even written. So how can you say, when you see from Reb Nosson, you see obviously not like that. So it sounds like from the way Rashi's interpretation that you're right, Reb Nosson, the way that's takes the question on Rashi, that Reb Nosson would be a different opinion because it says the Gemara Tanaihi, we Lamaisa find machlekes between Ula and Reb Chanina is a machlekes Tanam. We find two opinions like him, and Reb Nosson would seem to be a different opinion. It says Gemara Tanaihi, it's a machlekes Tanaim. The time like within the Brisa. Says the Brisa, this halacha of our Mishnah that we're discussing. You cannot collect lachilas peiris for the consumption of the produce, or for the increase of the value of the property that this buyer made it. The other cases that we discussed in the Mishnah for the wife and the daughters to eat from the estate, you cannot collect them in the chasim mishabadim. They take an oilam because of the remedy of the world. Why? Because it's not written, which is like Ula's interpretation. And you're going to collect from the kuches, even by an oral loan, so no one's going to ever buy a field from his friend because everyone's going to be afraid. Maybe the guy's alone. I know he did oral loan. So the whole commerce is going to collapse because no one's going to want to buy from anyone. So if a tikkun oilam, that the world should function, so therefore we said that no, it's not written, you cannot collect from Chas Meshabad. On that, Rabbi Yesi says, tikkun oilam yeshbezu. What type of tikkun oilam is this regarding it? What do you mean by loyin ketuvin? It's not even the set amount. In other words, as Rashi explains, how could a buyer be careful? So even without tikkun oilam, it wouldn't make sense to collect simply because there's no set amount. There's no set. It would be impossible to protect oneself, even if you would find out that there's an oral loan, because you just don't know what the set amount is. It's unlimited. So that's like Reb Chanina. So you see that we have two opinions, one like Ula, one Reb Chanina, and then maybe Reb Nosson is a third opinion, but it's not difficult on them because we find this as a machlekes tanoi. Yeah, halacha, the next halacha of the Mishnah. It's about mitzvah mitzvah. If someone finds a lost object, lo yeshava, when he comes to return it, he doesn't have to swear. When the guy says, "Hey, I had lost 10, this 5. What do you mean? Swear to me that you didn't siphon off 5 of them." Doesn't have to swear because obviously, if you have to swear, no one's going to want to return. So, related discussion. I'm going to be Yitzchak. He says, let's say one guy says that shnei kisen kishurin metzaseli, that there were two purses that were tied to each other that I that I lost, that you found. The other guy says, what are you talking about? I only found one purse. So it says Rabbi Yitzchak Nishba. He has to swear, as the Gemara is going to explain, because generally purses, if they're tied together, don't become detached. So that makes the claim of the owner a tainis bari, which is a whole different Masechta discussion of like when you have a definite claim, and because you have one of them, definitely I know for sure you took the other one, because it's not like it got detached. When you tie purse together, there's no reason why it should get detached. And the other guy's admitting to one of it, so he's moed b'miktzas. So since he has a definite claim, a tainis bari, so says Rabbi Yitzchak, he has to swear. Let's say he tells him, Shnei shvarim keshurim mitzasli, you found two of my tied oxen. But the other guy says, no, it's not true. There's only one. Then but then he doesn't have to swear. Why? My timer. Oxen, they get detached. Even if they're tied, they're going crazy and they rip off the rope. And therefore, even though he knew he had them both together, but it's a maybe claim. It's not a definite claim, because maybe they had detached themselves. But kisin le'menatchim adadi. But purses don't become detached. They don't have any motion inside of them, and therefore, since they're inanimate objects, so therefore that you don't have to swear. Now, says the Gemara further. Let's say he says a different type of a claim. The claim was the same. He says, yeah, there were two oxen that were tied together that you found. But the guy who was returning it says like this. He says, you're right, Matzase, I did find two oxen together. But I already returned one of them to you. Oh, here, although we said if he denies and says, no, only found one, that even though it's a moed b'miktzas, he would not have to swear because it's a tainis shema. Here, if he says, yes, I did, but I already returned, so then he would have to swear that he already returned one already, because that makes the claimant's claim a tain of adois. Because that even though he didn't see him when he found them, but because he's admitting that I found both. So the claim is a definite claim. And now he's admitting to partial of the claim now by saying that, yeah, but I already returned one. So I don't have to return more than this one. But he's saying that no, you didn't. And it's a definite claim because he's admitting that he found two of them. So because of that, it's different than the first case, and the halach is going to be that he's going to have to swear. Okay, that's more bab mitzvah. But says the Gemara, I don't understand. Rabbi Yitzchak, how does he say this halach of swearing? Doesn't he hold that when you find a lost object, don't swear when they take an oil like we had in our Mishnah? What's he saying? That if you found these purses, you're going to have to swear. So as we continue to Bay, he says the Gemara, who the Amar Rabbi ben Yaakov. He says like Rabbi ben Yaakov that where a guy claims where the tain is buried, a definite claim, that's not considered as a Meshav Aveda. That's not considered as a guy who's just returning a lost object. Why? So the Gemara said the time like we learned the Brisa. So it's interesting the way he words it, but he says, says, at times the person will swear on his own claim, which, as Rashi explains, at this point the Gemara makes it sound like that no one's claiming him, like his own claim. The Gemara later on is going to explain that no, it's not like no one's claiming him. It's where the son of the person who died is making the claim, which is similar to Rabbi Yitzchak's teaching of Tainis Bari, which is that where you don't know for sure what happened, but you're making a definite claim because you knew that you had the two purses tied together, and then a guy is returning the lost object, which I thought you return lost object, you don't have to swear. No, because the guy has a Tainis Bari, he has a definite claim. It's going to be similar to when the son of someone who passed away is going to make a claim where it's not really a legitimate claim. So we're calling it Tainis Atzmai, but it'll be enough of a claim to force him to swear. What's this case? So the Gemara says, Ketzad. So it's as follows. Someone says to somebody, says, Mana lavicha biyadi. Your father, I owed him 100 dinar. But, v'chalta pras. I gave him back half of what I owed him. So what's the halacha? Halacha is harez nishba. The guy who is admitting to the son of the guy who he owed 100 dinar to, who says, yeah, but I paid him 50, he has to swear that he paid up the 50.
previous transaction. I owe him 50, and this is what it is. The son doesn't know anything. Why is it a shiur? So if the son knows, it says, I know my father owed, gave you 100. Now you're going to be mitzvah yuchai. So what? No, but the question is, what's moide? It's not moide. You coming out with information. The son has no information. Then you're not moide.
Right. So this is exactly what part of the discussion is going to be regarding this. What is it that you're swearing regarding? Why are you being obligated in this shvuah? And why would a guy on his own admission be obligated?
Moide means admitting for what?
Right, from partial of the claim. Meaning there's a claim of 100. Right. Right, exactly. Exactly. Right. So that's what the Gemara is going. Right. That's exactly what the Gemara is going to discuss. Is it tainus atzma literally your own claim? So what type of moed mixus is there, or is there some claim here? And if there is a claim, what is that claim exactly? So says the Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov that you have to swear. This is quote unquote a guy who swears on his own claim because. Okay, you say so. You told me that my father, you owed 100 dinar and you paid him 50, and now you have 50 left. Okay, but you're already admitting to part of a claim, so you got to swear on your own claim. They say, "What's It's like when the guy comes to return. You had nothing on me. I found something, and I'm returning on my own goodwill. I don't have to swear regarding the other half that you claim you had this other purse tied to each other. Well, but here also, you didn't know that your father owed me." Right? That's you didn't know this, that your father owed me $100. I told you I paid 50. Right? You can make me swear that I paid 50 already? So that's the machlekes. So the Gemara asks, Rabbi ben Yaakov Leslie doesn't hold of that a concern of tikkun olam of meisha veda pater, that you're exempt from the oath? Because if he doesn't hold of this tikkun olam, then nobody's going to come and return stuff. So also, if no one's claiming him, he's like a meshaved out of his own goodwill. So no one's going to want to admit. I'm going to admit, and I'm going to be mechuyev. Well, forget about it. So why is he holding it Yechayev? So the Gemara says you're right. Not so simple. Amarav, it's talking about betoyin katan. It's talking about where that the child is claiming from this guy. I remember my tati. We were in shul, and he gave you $100. So the guy's admitting, yeah, but I paid him back already $50. That's the case. We has to swear. It says Gemara, katan, a child. Is there any substance to a claim of a child? But it's not. It's a Mishnah Masechet Shavuos that says, "Einish boin al tainis chereshet v'katan." You don't swear when a deaf mute, mentally deranged, or a child makes a claim. So how is this helping us? It's still a Meisha Aveda. The claim of a child doesn't do anything. It says, no, my katan. What do we mean when we said a child? It means a gadol. It means an adult. Wait a second. But my katan, then why are you calling him a child? So the gabi mili di avev katanhu. Regarding his father's business affairs, he's like a child. Just like a child doesn't know. It could be 30 years old and he doesn't know what his father had going on in the business. So therefore, we're talking about that, yes, but it's an adult. So a claim of an adult is substantial. It says, I know my father, whatever. So it says, if that's the case, that you're talking about that an adult child made a claim from his late father, so tainus atzmai, you're calling it the defendant's own claim? Tainus achemhu, what are you talking about? It's a claim from others. You have a 30-year-old making the claim in front of Bezdin. Says the Gemara, yeah, it's tainus achem. You're right. Others are making the claim, but his own admission that he's admitting to him that it's true, like what you're saying, and he's admitting that he still owes him half. Therefore, he's going to swear. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Kula tanosanami. Every claim is tainus achem by dos atzmai ninu. What does that mean? So of course you're going to swear. So like Rashi explains, there's really two questions. First of all, in such a case, would Rabbanan disagree? Rabbanan would hold you're a Meishav Aved and be part from Shvuah? What are you talking about? I have a 30-year-old son of this guy who passed away making the claim. How can you call it tainus atzmai? And another question is that how can you say that at times a person would have to swear on his own claim? What do you mean? Every time you have to swear because of such a claim. But what zogsta? So Elorah says the Gemara, don't say that we're talking about an adult son was making the claim. No, we're talking about a 7-year-old son who's making the claim. Then your question is, the halacha is you quoted me in Mishnah Masechet Shavuos that says einish boy not tainus katan. You don't swear on the claim of a child. So what are you gaining to tell me that that's why Rabbi Elazar would hold, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, that you would have to swear. I'll tell you this asma because it doesn't help me the claim of a child. Yeah, but says the Gemara, that was only said when the claim of the child was that I gave you money. Because by a shvu, the pasuk says in Shemais Chav Beis Gitin Ish, when the man will give and you're going to deny it, then you're going to have to swear, which Ish comes to exclude a child. But if he's not coming with his own claim, he's coming with the claim of his father, then you would have to swear even to a child. Whereas according to Rabbanan, even for the claim of an adult, you wouldn't have to swear. Because the Mishnah teaches in Masechta Shavuos that if someone says to someone else, my father, you owed 100 dinarim, and he says, no, it's only 50 dinarim, the guy is going to be pater. So what's this machlekes? B'derabba k'meflegi, says the Gemara. There's a machlekes in the teaching of Rabbah. What's the teaching of Rabbah? Because the Amar Rabbah says like this. Memnema Amar Torah, why did the Torah say, Moide mixta satani yeshab? A well-known halacha in the Torah, every little boy learns this halacha of Moide mixta, a pasuk in the Chumash, that when you admit to part of the claim, you have to swear. Why? Why did the Torah say that? Because biblically, the halacha is when you're kafir hakol, for example, when you deny all the claim, you're going to be pater from shvu mederaisa. You can be pater from paying because I might make a baraya. Rabbinically, you chayv shvu hasas, but biblically, by moed mitzatan, you have to swear. What's the reason for this? Says the Gemara. So the reason for it is because chazaka, we have a presumption that ain't all the meiz pana b'fnei bal chayv. A person would not have the audacity, the chutzpah, in front of his creditor to deny the whole claim. He says, what are you talking about? I said, what do you mean? I lent you $5 million. $5 million? Who, me? Sure, you didn't mix me up with someone else? Someone would not have the azah to do such a thing, to deny the whole claim. So therefore, because of his admitting part of the claim, so he's not believed on the rest. Why? Because really, the guy wanted to deny the whole claim. But why is he not denying the whole claim? Because you don't have the audacity to do it. So once you're admitting to part of it, this tells us that really you owe the whole thing. You don't have the goal to do that, to have the ha'azah to do that. So therefore, we know that probably you owe the whole thing. You just didn't deny the whole thing because you don't have the arrogance. You're not as unhealthy as some people that they could be so stone cold face and just say, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Now, so if you're going to say, and this is the way Rashi explains it, takes to discuss a little differently. He says, if you're going to say, wait a second, so how could he swear on the rest? You tell me that the guy's lying. Really, he owes the whole thing. But he's trying to fudge his way. He said, no, I gave you already. Remember, it was on a Sunday afternoon. I paid you already half, whatever this and that. So what's called Migad Chashem Emayna, Hashanam Ashbuasa. Wait, this is the way Rashi explains that if you're suspect regarding monetary law, you should be suspect regarding the oath. So how are we believing you regarding that you're swearing? What are we gaining to say that, okay, now you have to swear? Yeah, just like I'm lying regarding the money, I'll lie regarding the oath that I don't owe you the other half. Not true, because really you're not suspect that you're going to steal the money from the fact that you didn't deny the whole thing. Now, this that you admitted to half of it, says the Gemara, really, the guy wanted to admit to the whole thing. So it's like the guy's a little mixed up. He really wanted to deny the whole thing, but he also wanted to admit the whole thing. Meaning, he wanted to deny the whole thing, not because he wanted to lie. He couldn't pay now. But he doesn't have the audacity to lie about the whole thing, so he admits to half of it, but he denies half. But then when the question is, the way Rashi explains the Gemara, is that, okay, so what does it help? If you're lying regarding half about the money, so you're going to lie on oath too. He says, no, because really the guy wants to admit the whole thing. He's not chashed amayna. He's not suspect that he's going to steal any money. He wants to admit to the whole thing. Why is he not admitting to the whole thing? It's not because he intends to steal the money. It's a shtumute hu dekomishtamedle. He just trying to get out of it right now. He's trying to push off the collector. So he thinks, I'll have money one day, I'll make it big, but right now I can't afford to. So I'll say, really, I paid you, and then a few years later, I'll put in his mailbox, I'll put into his account, and I'll pay a big sum of money. I'm not going to saying, no. Rami Shvu Levei, impose an oath on him, that he should admit to the whole thing. So an oath would make sense because the guy doesn't want to lie. He's not chashan on a shavua. Just not even chashan on the loina. He really would give all the money. I pasha can't. So, but I know he'll take the shirt off my back. So I'll say I already paid you half. But of course I'm not suspect. And you make an oath. Okay, the guy's not gonna lie on the oath, and then he's gonna pay up. But so this is the machlekes. So what's the machlekes? So what is this teaching of Rabbah help us regarding how we're trying to understand this machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and the Chacham? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov sabi holds loishna boy v'loishna b'bnai. Doesn't make a difference if it's a claim of the lender himself or the lender's son. Einamei is he would not have the audacity to totally deny the claim. Therefore, when you have this child of the claimant saying, my tati gave you $100. So when you now admit to 50, lav meishav avedahu, you're not a guy who's on your own goodwill returning it. What do you mean? The English buying the tainas cotton. Yeah, it's not the taina of the cotton himself. It's the taina that his father had. And you would not have the audacity to the son, and therefore you consider like a regular Moed Miktzes. Therefore you would have to swear. That's the same teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak, who we said that even when you're returning a lost object, and the guy's saying, what do you mean? There was 2 purses, you give me only back 1. Since it was a tainas bari, Rashi had explained, that's the equivalent of when the child of the claimant claiming that you owe me the money. That's what Rabbi Eliezer called tainas atzma, because really it's a child's claim, but it's from the tata, and you wouldn't have the chutzpah to totally deny it. So here, when the guy is returning the lost object, says Rabbi Yitzchak, since purses are connected and they don't just come unattached, and it's a definite claim, you would have to swear because you wouldn't have the audacity. He compares it to this case of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbanan Tzarva, they hold no. Boy, who is. The guy would only not have chutzpah to deny to the guy himself. Regarding his son, he would have the audacity. Is from the fact that he's not having the audacity, meaning to deny the whole thing. So whatever he's returning is out of his own goodwill. It's like returning a lost object. So therefore it's going to have the same halacha as we said in our Mishnah of an Aveda, that you would be pater from a shvuah. Thank you to any time. Those things.